Okay, this video is going to be about HTML Canvas. Those of you who are interested in making video games might want to pay attention. It's a little bit complicated, so I recommend you have this video open in a tab, and then you pause as you need to and actually create the document as I am as we go. It will definitely help. Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to create a new document. Canvas demo, then open it in Atom, my editor of choice. Okay, so we make our basic HTML document, and in the title, this is Canvas demo. So I'm going to make a canvas HTML element. This element has to be closed. It cannot be self-closed. And the reason for that is not all browsers support HTML Canvas. So inside, you're supposed to put a message to the user: your browser does not support HTML Canvas. Something to that effect. Okay. But really, technically, there doesn't have to be anything in here. This message is only in case the browser doesn't support it. Okay, so we need an ID because we're going to have to get this element from JavaScript, so you can just call it Canvas. And then we can specify a height and a width. You do not want to specify the height and width with CSS. You need to specify it with these attributes because it specifies the exact number of pixels the canvas will, the size will be. If you specify it with CSS, it can stretch your pixels and it'll look strange. So you must use height and width attributes. So we'll say the width is 640, and height is 480. Okay. Let's go ahead and make an H1 element on top that says Canvas demo. Alright, let's save it and see what we got. There we go. Looks good so far. We don't see anything. It's because the canvas starts out blank. Alright. And the last element in your body tag should be your JavaScript. Okay. Since we're going to be doing a lot of JavaScript, I'm not going to follow the normal indentation rules. The indentation is just for humans anyway. So I'm going to back my script tag all the way up to the beginning, so we have more room to indent for the JavaScript. And I like to add a little comment. And you can do stuff like this too to make it more clear as you scroll through your code. So now I've got a nice big heading that's just HTML comments for me, so I know this is my JavaScript section. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is get the canvas element. So we've learned document.get element by ID, and the ID is canvas. Whatever we specify here, that's what we need to specify here to get the proper element. And we're going to store that element in a variable called canvas element, canvas L. Alright, so now we have the canvas element and we need to get the drawing context. So we're going to create a variable called CTX. It stands for context. It's only 3 characters, so it's easy to type because we're going to be typing it a lot. canvas.getContext 2D. So there's other text you can do three-dimensional stuff, but we're only going to cover 2D. Alright, so this context element, we can set colors, and we can create a rectangle. That's the easiest thing to start with. So let's do context.fill style. And we're going to say, we're going to make that a color. Let's say I want my color to be a blue color. And then I'm going to tell my context to fill a rectangle starting at the pixel 10, the X pixel, this is X, and then Y, 10, and then the width will make 200, and the height is 500. Oops, 50, we'll just make it 50. Okay, so in a comment here I'm going to say it's the X coordinate, the Y coordinate, the height, oops, I'm sorry, the width, and then the height. And you can remember it's width first because width is in the X direction and height is in the Y direction. So it goes X, Y, X, Y. Alright, so we're going to fill a rectangle starting at position X equals 10, position Y equals 10, width of 200, and height of 200. Okay, let's reload, and we've got a rectangle here. Now we can't really see the bounds of our canvas, so let's set the style of the body tag. We'll set the background color. And then the canvas starts out blank and translucent, so we need to actually fill the background of our canvas. So we need to make a rectangle. Let's duplicate this, we'll make this white, and we're going to do context.fill rectangle 0, 0, and whatever we specified up here, 640 by 480, that's the size we want this rectangle to be. We're painting the background color of our canvas. Okay, so 640 by 480. Okay, so that colored our canvas white. So this is our canvas. Now notice my use of comments here to organize things. Okay, let's put this at the top. This is our help. Alright, so we've got these two rectangles. Now I can make another one. Also, one thing to note here, X, the 0 starts here, and as you increase X, it goes in the rightmost direction. Okay, so 0 to 10 moves from this line to here. So a 10 and X is right here. Anywhere along that line, that vertical line, is X equals 10. Y direction moves, as you increase Y, it moves down. That's it's the opposite of what you're used to in mathematics in the Cartesian plane. Okay, so when we say Y is 10 here, we start Y is 0 up at the top and we move down, Y is 10. Okay, and then the height of 50, we start at that 10 and then we go 50 pixels. So this Y should be 60 because of the initial 10 and then a width or a height of 50. So this Y value should be about 60. Alright, so let's make another rectangle. We'll make this one green. Alright, and we'll keep everything the same, except we'll move it in the Y position down 100 pixels. Okay, so this should create another rectangle. Oops. This is the X position, so it should create another rectangle at X equals 10, which is along this line. And then we've increased the Y value by 100. So that's 10, this is about 60, so 100 should be about here. So we should see a green rectangle show up about there. Alright, so that looks good. Let's make another one. Make a brown rectangle. Okay, we'll do the same thing. We're just going to increase this by 100. So this is, the Y value is 200 now. So we should get another one underneath the rectangle we just created. Alright, so that's good. Let's make a red one. Same thing, increase it by 100. We'll make this dark red. Alright, but let's put a border on this one. Okay, so if you're familiar with any drawing software, when you're drawing a shape, there's a fill and then the stroke. The stroke is basically the border. Okay, so ctx.stroke style, we're going to say is black. And then ctx.stroke rectangle. So fill rect fills it with a color. Stroke rect draws the stroke around the rectangle. Okay, so we want the exact same coordinates here because we're drawing a stroke around the exact same rectangle. These points define the rectangle, and stroke tells it to draw a line instead of fill. Okay, it's a very thin line. Let's make that bigger. Okay, before we draw our stroke right here, we can change the line width. So let's make that 10 and see what happens. There we go. Now it's important to notice that the rectangle starts in the middle of this border, in the middle of the stroke. So if we draw the fill after the stroke, so we move this fill underneath, now you're going to see a smaller stroke, but that's because the browser rendered the stroke first, and then on top of it, it rendered the fill. So it covered up a portion of whatever was on the canvas before. So it's important to know the order in which things are drawn. So as you define them here, they start in the back of the canvas, and anything at the bottom is going to be on the top. So I'll show you that more when we draw some shapes on top of other shapes. Okay. And we can do an empty rectangle. We use the same line width from above, so we don't have to redefine it. We don't really need to redefine stroke style because it's black still. And we need to increase the Y value by 100 pixels. So we're at 410 now. So we've got an empty. So notice this is the same stroke style. The line width is 10, but over here you can only see 5 pixels. That's because the red rectangle was drawn over the top of the stroke. If you did it the other way, then the red, if you draw the stroke after, which we can go ahead and just do, the fill style is still dark red, so we don't have to change that. Oops. We do have to change these have to match, right? So I have to change my Y value. Okay, so we stroke, then fill, stroke, then fill. If we reverse it, this one, we're going to fill and then stroke. Save it. There we go. Okay. So now let's do some text. All right. We do context dot font. We'll make the font 40 pixels, and we'll say it's sans serif. I'm going to make all of the text have a fill style of white. And a stroke style of black. Okay. So now let's try to write some text. Context dot fill text. And we're going to label our first box. And we have to write the position that we want this text to appear. So if we want the text to appear in the middle of our first rectangle, we need to figure out the x and y of the center of our rectangle. So its height is 200, so half of that is 100. That'll be the center, but then we have to add our starting position, which is 10. So the x value is half of the width plus the starting position. So this is going to be 110. And then we have to do our y position. So half of our height, so that's 25, plus our starting position is 10. So it should be 35. So we'll see what the fill text does here. CTX. Alright, now it looks like it started in the middle, but it started with the baseline of the text in the middle, and it didn't center the text. Okay, that's not what we want. So there's a property. We can change the text alignment. Context.text align to be center. That's the horizontal alignment. So let's see what that did. Okay, that's closer, but vertically it's still not correct. So we can change the vertical alignment with context.context text baseline. And that's middle. In most of the web stuff, the center is horizontal, and vertical stuff, if you want it centered, they call it middle most of the time. Just FYI. Okay, so there we go. That looks good. And now we need to put our stroke around it, the outline. So instead of fill text, you just do stroke text. Okay, now this is because our line width is really big from way up here. Line width 10. Let's put it back down to something smaller. Let's go context dot line width equals 0.5. There we go. Alright, so that's the blue box. Let's make the green box. Okay, and each box is 100 pixels farther down, which means Y is increased 100. So if we just increase that by 100, this should be right. Yep. The text is a little bit too big, so let's reduce our font to 36. There we go. Okay. Let's do the brown box, but this time let's change the font a little bit. So context.font, let's make it serif. And again, we have to increase our Y by 100 pixels. And then change the message. Okay, so we're changing the font to serif. We've increased Y by 100 each, so we're moving to the next rectangle, and we change the text. We save it, reload. So this is the difference between serifs. The serifs are the little pointy things on the ends of the font, and these are sans serifs. Sans means without, so sans serif means without the serifs. Okay. So copy that and we'll do the red. We'll maintain the font we had for brown, so we don't need to change it. Now here I'm going to show you, like if I type red box, if these don't match, it's still going to draw the outline as third box and the fill as red box. Okay, so we go ahead and increase our Y value. See that? It filled in red box, but you can see behind it, it should be fourth box. If we make the line context dot line width equal something a little bit bigger, you can see it better, 2. Let's just make it 1. Okay, so it just drew an outline on the stroke. The stroke is always just an outline. The fill fills the shape, or in this case text. Okay, so you can do other polygons too. We can do a simple triangle. Let's do a yellow triangle. So context begin path. Okay, so you're going to begin a path, and then when you're finished defining that path, then you close the path. Okay, in between is where we define our path. Context.moveTo. MoveTo moves the imaginary cursor, the X and Y position, without drawing a line. So MoveTo, let's say we want to draw a triangle around here. Okay, so we want the X position. If this whole thing is 640, we want the X position around here, a little close to midway, and then we want Y, maybe 50 or something. Okay, so we'll do MoveTo about half of 640, so that's 300, and about 50. It's the X and Y position. So it's moving an imaginary cursor to 300 pixels. The X is 300 pixels, and then the Y is down 50. So there's an imaginary cursor right here now because of MoveTo. Now I do context.line2. Now this moves the cursor, but as it moves the cursor, it also draws a line. Okay, so we're going to make a triangle, so let's move the cursor down here. So our X value is going to be bigger. There's 300, so it's going to be bigger, like 500 or something. And then our Y value is going to be a lot bigger too. So that's like 400 or something. So we'll line to 500 and 400. Okay, so now our cursor should be here, and we want to go back to here. If we make a right triangle, then this line should be vertical. Okay, so our X value should be what the X value here started as. So context.line2, the X value here was 300, so we're going to go back to that. And if we want to keep this line horizontal, then our Y value should be the same as this point. So this point's Y value was 400. Okay, and close path basically tells it to draw another line from this point to where we began. Okay, so I don't have to specify line 2 again, it's going to automatically do it. Okay, if we save this, refresh, nothing happens. It's because we didn't tell it to stroke or fill. Okay, so context line width equals 1. Oh, it's already 1. We don't need that. Context stroke style equals black. And context fill style equals yellow. Okay, then we'll fill and then stroke. Context.fill. If we save that, we have just a yellow rectangle or a triangle, and then we put a stroke on top. CTX.stroke. It adds the line. Okay. You can do it doesn't just do triangles, it's anything you want, any polygon you can do MoveTo and line2 with. The circle is a little bit more complicated. So we'll do context.begin path again. So this starts a brand new path. All of the path stuff we did here before is no longer valid since we're starting a new path. and we're always going to have to close the path. So go ahead and do that first. And then in between is where we define our path. So the circle is context dot arc. Okay, so let me comment that out real quick. Go back up to our help section. So this was a rectangle. A polygon. Is context dot begin path, context dot move to xy, context dot line to xy, and then however many of those that you want, and then context dot close path. Alright, and then a circle is context dot begin path, context dot close path, context dot arc. Now arc takes the x of the center of the circle, the y position of the center of the circle, the radius, and then the starting point for drawing the circle. So 0 is at 3 o'clock. Okay, so this gets a little complicated, so we can look that up on the website. Let's look up Canvas HTML arc. Okay. So here, 0 is where you start drawing. So it's like your move to. It moves the cursor here to the rightmost portion of the circle. That's 3 o'clock on a clock. So you start at 0. That's the starting position, but you can start anywhere. But 0 is here, and then as you go around wherever you want it to stop, you probably want to specify a multiple of pi. The diameter of the circumference of a circle is always in terms of pi, right? So 1 pi times the radius gets you there, right? 1.5 pi and then 2 pi. Okay, so let's make a complete circle. So it's going to go from 0 all the way around back to 0, but it's going to be called 2 pi. Okay? So that's start position and then end position. Okay, so let's go down to the actual code. And we have context.arc. Okay, and let's say we want the circle to be somewhere around here. So that's like 300, around 400, and then 100, 200, somewhere around there. So we'll go 400, 200 and see what that looks like. So this is the x and y of the center of the circle. The x is 400, the y is 200. And then let's make the radius small, 20 pixels. And then our starting position is 0, and then our ending position is 2 pi. There's a built-in library in JavaScript called math. You type math.pi for pi, and that gives you the value of pi. Okay, so we've created our path, and now we can stroke and fill it. Okay, so context.fill style equals orange, context dot fill, and then context dot stroke. And that gives it the outline. Let's make that a little bigger. Let's make it 50. There we go. Okay, but you can do, that's an entire circle. If you want a partial circle, you can do that also. Again, we'll reference W3 schools here. So we can make a partial circle to about here. So this is about 1.25 times pi. Okay. So let's try that. Context dot begin path, context dot arc, comment that out for now, and we got to close our path, context dot close path. Alright, let's make this, let's put it inside of the other one. So the centers will be the same. We'll say 400 and 200. We'll make the radius smaller, so it's inside the other one. So the radius will make 20. And we'll make this one start at 0 and go to 1.25 times math.pi. Okay. Then context.fill style, let's make it a purple, so we get some red in there, not much green, and a lot of blue. And then we context.fill and context.stroke. Okay, so it started drawing the circle at 0, and over here is 1 pi, and we did 1.25 pi, which is about here. And then we closed the path, so it drew a line from where we were to the beginning. And then we filled and stroked. Okay, so that's the very basics. It's kind of a lot, but this shows you how you can draw pictures, and we're going to have a real simple little lab that's going to be fun where you can draw a picture coming up. So that's going to be a fun one for you to do. And then later I'll show you how to animate this, so you could do a video game. Basically what you have to do for that is you draw everything that you want to be on the screen, and then the computer draws things so fast you don't even see it. So you have to draw a canvas again, a blank white, and then you change the position of the elements slightly, and then redraw all the elements on top. And so it looks like it's moved just a little bit. And then you do that again. So every time you're blanking the canvas and then redrawing everything in a slightly different position. Okay, so the X and Y coordinates, some basic algebra is pretty important when you're doing anything in like two-dimensional gaming. But it can be pretty fun. So it's a lot to keep track of, but it's fun, and you get to see a nice little picture when you're done. So it's the basics of HTML Canvas.